This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition, Queenpin 2.0, Part 17. When we left off, Tru, Salima, and Big Wood were providing the Queen Mother with all of the details surrounding their time in Colombia. Tru told her all about how she was made as a result of Lil Jose's kidnapping and Salima's call to Big Jose. She also told her how Jira was instrumental in helping the Colombians make the connection between her and the Baptiste family. The Queen Mother said, and that's precisely why Samuel should have clued me in a lot sooner. He's always been the one who gave Jira the benefit of the doubt. I never have. I know my sister. I know what she's capable of. He should have known that it wouldn't have taken long for Jira to go from being a hostage to being a participant. Salima said, exactly. And that's what I was afraid of, which is why I couldn't understand why they was dragging their feet on trying to find her and playing checkers with the Morenas instead of playing chess. I couldn't remember all that I told her about my involvement with Lil Jose. I've been involved with quite a few men over the years. But I knew whatever I told her she would use to get herself out of a jam. The Queen Mother said, so they take you to this warehouse where Jira tries to attack you, despite the fact that they didn't know where Lil Jose was or who had him? Tru said, yeah, but their goal was to scare me into telling them everything I knew. They weren't really sure what my role was. Since the possibilities were limitless, they figured they'd start with the fear factor. And if that didn't work, then that would suggest that I wasn't a civilian. The Queen Mother said, so what did you do? Tru said, I needed her to believe that I was a civilian. Whether she believed that I was involved in the plan or not, I did not need her to figure out that I was a finisher. I had no idea that they already had Lil Jose, but all I could do was pray that they were somehow in position to ensure that I remained safe. But either way, I couldn't focus on that. I had to focus on making sure that they didn't get anything out of me. 1 month and 3 weeks earlier, the men stood by while Jira roughed up Tru, while asking her over and over again, who are you? What's your real name? What's the plan? And for Tru's part, she remained silent. She was eating every punch and slap, but it didn't look that way because she was screaming and crying and putting on a whole show. The training that she'd undergone to become a finisher had prepared her for real torture, and this wasn't even close. She'd endured sensory deprivation, hunger, and thirst while she was undergoing her training. So she was good. She was playing the role, and she was playing it well. So well that one of the men had to stop Jira and say, okay, don't do too much because you know that there's a lot more on the line. We were instructed to get information from her, but we can't hurt her. They have something that we need back, remember? Hearing that, Tru knew that Salima and the crew had Lil Jose. The man had called a halt to Jira's abuse after almost 5 hours, and Tru knew that she needed to take advantage of that opportunity to gain some empathy and to get some information about where she was and how secure the facility was and the rank and file of the men surrounding her. So she said, listen, I don't know what time it is, but I took my medicine before I went to bed last night, and when I get up in the morning, I have to eat or I'll be really, really sick. I'm sure you don't care about my well-being, but if you're trying to use me as collateral, it probably wouldn't be a good idea for me to die in here. One of the men told Jira, she's a diabetic. She's been taking insulin every night. Jira asked, and you saw her take it? The man said, yeah, she gives herself shots in the stomach. Jira said, well, get her some diabetic-friendly breakfast. What's she been eating? When the men told her what they'd been feeding Tru, it all checked out in her mind. She sent one of the runners to go and grab Tru some breakfast. And then she asked, you need to take your medication with that breakfast? Tru said, no, but I need to check my blood sugar. Jira said, where's her monitor and her medicine? The man said, oh, we left it at the safe house. Jira said, well, send somebody to get it or to bring it or whatever. It's obvious that my brother and his crew used this girl as a damn tool. They would never employ somebody with damn diabetes to be a finisher. Y'all should have told me that before I did all this to this girl. Look at her face. Jira said, listen, just tell me the truth. Who put you up to trying to seduce Lil Jose and get in close to him? Tru said, I promise you, I have no idea what you're talking about. I met him when I was on vacation with my friends. Then Jira turned to the man who was in charge of the team, who was keeping an eye on Tru, and said, where did y'all find the bug? The man said, in the medicine bag. We had to rip it apart to find it in the seams. Jira asked Tru, and who had access to that medicine bag? Tru said, I don't know. I mean, I never leave it out of my sight. When I was in Venezuela and Lil Jose and I would go out, I would leave it at his house. But other than me and him, I never actually saw anybody touch it. Jira said, well, where did you keep it? And Tru said, well, I would put my medicine in the refrigerator and I would leave my needles and my meter on a nightstand in the bag. Jira looked at the man and said, somebody on Jose's team probably put that bug in there on Lil Jose's behalf, just in case she got brought to Colombia. Soldier said, that would make sense. But how do you explain the other thing? He was referring to Lil Jose's kidnapping. Jira said, if Big Jose was playing both sides, then I can guarantee that the families had somebody watching them. And if it wasn't her, then they saw it when y'all removed her from that house. They probably just decided to capitalize on it. The man said, but why would they say that we had something of theirs? Jira said, because y'all have me. Tru, recognizing an opportunity, said, oh God, please tell me they didn't do anything to my man, please. What's going on? Somebody tell me something. Then Jira, wanting to see Tru's reaction, decided to tell her. She said, somebody kidnapped Lil Jose just a few days after you came to Colombia. Baby Tru put on the show of a century. She was crying and hollering. She made herself throw up. Jira said, untie her arms before she choked to death. The men untied her. Tru fell out on the floor, crying and shaking and vomiting some more. She said, this is crazy. Y'all all crazy. At that point, everybody in the room was convinced that Tru had no idea what the hell was going on. She was in no way involved in it. She couldn't have been a finisher because she got diabetes, and she wasn't at all connected to the four families. By the time they brought her food and water, Jira was babying her. It's okay, sweetheart, you're gonna have to eat, baby. And then Tru ate as much of the food as she could stand and threw up again. When they brought her her blood sugar monitor and she tested her blood sugar, it was dangerously low. She said, I can't eat another bite, but if you can give me some orange juice, that'll help raise my blood sugar. Jira sent one of the lackeys to go and grab her some orange juice. And then she said, well, we can't take her back to the safe house because it's been compromised with that bug. We're going to have to call Santiago and figure out something. We're going to take her somewhere where she can lay down. The man in charge called Santiago and told him everything that they deduced and what they believed they found out. He had them take her to a small apartment that was above an old seamstress shop. Meanwhile, LJ had landed in Colombia, and Donovan decided that he'd be the one to go and pick him up from the private airstrip. While he was gone, Salima decided that it was time for Lil Jose to find out who was behind this whole situation. She walked into the room where Lil Jose was being kept and said, I heard you was looking for me. Shocked, Lil Jose said, Talia? What the hell are you doing here? Where the hell have you been? And who the hell are you? Salima said, your only concern should be how you plan to live through this and making sure that Yael lives through it too. She called Big Jose using another throwaway phone and a voice changer. She said, and here I was thinking that you had one thing that I wanted. Apparently you have two. You want your son back? Arrange a meeting tonight. And then she hung up. When Donovan picked LJ up from the private airstrip, he said, listen, man, I got some bad news. LJ said, please don't tell me something happened to Tru. Donovan said, no. Your sister showed up in Venezuela. And then she forced Salima to bring her with her to Colombia. LJ said, for what? Donovan said, she's trying to put in work. When they got back to the safe house, LJ went slam off. Rennie said, I done told you more times than I can count that I'm grown. Keeping stuff from me, leaving me out, and demanding that I do what you want me to do was okay when I was a kid. But now, I make my own decisions. I'm my own woman. I'm INDEPENDENT. What you know about me? LJ said, oh, dear God. Have you been taking your medication? Rennie said, yep, twice a day. LJ said, so what you're going to do is you're going to get in that car and you're going to go to the airstrip and you're going to get on a plane and you're going to go back to Dallas. Rennie said, nope, you can't make me either. Salima said, we don't have time for this. We need to be working on our plan. I demanded a meeting with Santiago Morena. And when I call Big Jose back, I'm going to tell him that Yael and Jira need to be there. LJ said, and how many men you got for this operation? When Salima told him, he said, so basically, you gonna walk all these people into an ambush. Salima said, no, I'm not, because I'm gonna tell him where to meet me. And then, I'm not gonna be there. Instead, the team is gonna follow every person who shows up there back to wherever they came from. We're gonna find out where they keeping Tru and my auntie, and then we'll catch them unawares. Meanwhile, at the Fourth Family safe house, Big Wood and Waz are waiting for their team to return. Woody still hadn't quite figured out the connection between his favorite girl and where Tru was being held, but his instincts told him that somehow it was connected to one of the places where his grandmother lived or worked or took him as a child. So he'd sent out teams to all of those locations to lay in wait and watch. The soldiers would send a runner back if they detected any activity that led them to believe that they had a hit. And at around 11:30-12, they hit gold when the caravan pulled up outside of the seamstress shop that Big Wood's grandmother used to own. One of the runners came back to the safe house and gave him the tap. Together, he, Waz, and the team put a plan into place. They were going in to get Tru that night, but first they had to find out where the Morenas were keeping Jira, whether she was being held against her will or whether she was a willing participant. Later that night, the team that Big Wood put on the seamstress shop observed as the caravan pulled up outside of the business, and several men and Jira exited with Tru in tow. Tru was clearly being controlled by the men, but Jira wasn't. Big Wood's men were instructed to stay on whatever vehicle Tru got in and whatever vehicle Jira got in. So when the two women got in separate vehicles, the team did just that. They followed them to the meetup location that Salima had arranged through Big Jose. They hung back and watched. From their positions, they were able to make several crews who were surveilling the location. A crew sent by the Morenas and a crew sent by Salima. When Big Wood found out that Tru was being kept in the apartment above the seamstress shop, he sent LJ a text on his satellite phone, giving him that location. LJ had already shared Salima's plan with him. So when the Morenas crew waited and Salima didn't show, they left and the caravan split up, going in two different directions. Big Wood's team hung back and observed as Salima's team followed the caravans. They didn't even have to get close because LJ had placed bugs on all the vehicles being used by Salima's team. His job was not to help Donovan, Salima, and Rennie get Tru and Jira back. His job was to keep them out of the line of fire while Big Wood and his team got them back. So Salima's team followed the caravan that had Jira to a sprawling estate in the hills of Colombia. And the other part of her team followed the caravan that had Tru in it back to the seamstress shop. They reported their whereabouts back to Salima, and Salima looked at her team back at the safe house and said, okay, so now we need another plan. We shouldn't have any problems getting into that apartment above that seamstress shop, but we're going to have a hard time getting into that estate. It looks like that might be where Santiago Morena lays his head. Let me find out my Aunt Jira done made him her man. We're going to have to split up and send a team to extract Tru and another team to stay on Aunt Jira. We're going to have to catch her slipping in order to get her back. Salima's team had reported the same thing to her that Big Wood's team had reported to him, that Jira left out of that apartment on her own volition. So Salima knew that her auntie was no longer a kidnapped victim. LJ said, my advice is that you not go in there tonight. They're going to be expecting that. You've got Lil Jose. Use him. Then he helped Salima develop a plan that included making direct contact with Santiago Morena herself and exchanging Lil Jose for Tru and Jira. He already knew Big Wood's plan. He was getting Tru out tonight. And with her no longer in play, Salima's team would adequately be able to use Lil Jose to get Jira. LJ was feeding Woody information, so he was going to let Woody know when Salima had arranged a meeting with Santiago, and then Woody would swoop in, snatch Jira, and if possible, snatch Santiago too. At the round table, the Queen Mother asked, so what the hell happened? Why didn't you follow the plan that you constructed with LJ? Salima said, because I had an ace in the hole. Rennie. She knows her brother. She knew he was up to something. She just didn't know what. Plus, I knew something that nobody else knew. I knew Aunt Jera. She was not going to stay around long enough to get caught. So Donovan and I decided to make it look like we were following the plan that we constructed with LJ. And behind his back, we were implementing our own plan.